Welcome back to the second episode of CFB Cauldron Live. I'm Bubba Wagamuth. Thank you for joining us for our second ever episode. A lot to talk about after a crazy week one. We had some roller coaster games. Every time slot was absolutely jam-packed. I know I was watching 2 to 3 games at a time trying to keep up with all the action. But tonight, we have a jam-packed show, but we're going to focus on week one, what happened, recap a few of the games I was able to tune into, some other games that were really interesting as far as what it means going forward in the season. We're also going to talk about my bets from last week. I'm not someone that's going to shy away. I didn't have a bad week, but if I have a bad week, I'm not going to shy away from it. Week 2 bets, a few other games that we're looking forward to, Big Ten West previews, and what I expect from the division moving forward. We have a whole lot to talk about tonight, so I want to get right into it. Starting with the first game of last week, which was the Backyard Brawl, first one in 11 years. Both teams took a little bit to get into this game. So as far on the West Virginia side, JT Daniels kind of settled into the game as it continued. The rest of the offense started to look more comfortable. West Virginia has some basketball players at wide receiver, just big dudes. It's going to give a lot of teams, especially in the Big 12, trouble. But the person I really want to focus on from this West Virginia offense is running back C.J. Donaldson. If you don't know who C.J. Donaldson was heading into Thursday night, you probably do now. True freshman, went from Miami, went to Gulliver Prep, wasn't super 3-star kid, wasn't super highly rated. Played tight end in high school, which was really interesting because he was 6'2", 240 pounds, converted to running back once he got up to Morgantown, and then absolutely took off in his first ever college game. Ran for 125 yards on only 7 carries, which is ridiculous, especially for a true freshman in that kind of environment. Also picked up a rushing touchdown. Look for C.J. Donaldson to be a potential bell cow of this West Virginia offense moving forward. Even though Graham Harrell likes to throw the football a lot, even though you have JT Daniels, you have a basketball team as your wide receiving core. Look for C.J. Donaldson to get a lot of carries, a lot of work as a true freshman, which is honestly impressive as a true freshman in college. Other side of the football, Pitt offense, same thing, kind of got better as the game went on. Keaton Silva seemed to relax a little bit more, kind of get in with his receivers, get into better rhythm, develop into the offense a little bit better. I think it's important for this Pitt team is to continue to build that chemistry between Keaton Silva and his wide receivers. Bub Means, Kanata Mumfield, Jared Wayne, all of those guys had solid games. All of them had multiple receptions for 40 yards or more. I think it's important to continue to build that relationship between Keaton Slovis because all those 3 of those 4 guys I just mentioned, including Keaton Slovis, are transfers. So it's going to take time for that offense to gel. Don't expect for this to be their final form. Hopefully it's not. But the offense also got better as the game continued. I think we can expect to see that as the season continues. I think the biggest takeaway from this game, I think most people will agree with me, the turning point, takeaway, whatever you want to call it, Neal Brown not going for it on 4th and down. You're in plus territory, West Virginia. You're up 7. 4th and 1. You have a massive 240-pound freshman who I just talked about who's been running all over this Pitt defense. The Pitt defensive line played good. They struggled against the run, but they were able to create havoc in the backfield whenever West Virginia was throwing the ball. But C.J. Donaldson's a massive 240-pound running back. 4th and 1, and it wasn't even 4th and 1. It was 4th in inches. That may even be an exaggeration. It was very, very short. Neal Brown decided to take a 5-yard delay of game penalty, move back, punt the ball, and in these big rivalry games, in these big-time important games, you have to slam the door on your opponent. You can't leave the door cracked. You have to slam the door on the opponent. Neal Brown left the door cracked. Pitt walked down the field and scored, and then crazy things happened in college football, especially in week 1. Pick 6. Pitt wins the game. West Virginia walks away with a loss after they were controlling that game up to that point. So I think the big takeaway from this game is Neal Brown, you have to go for it in that situation going forward, especially in this kind of game. West Virginia, I think, impressed a lot of people. They impressed me, for being completely honest. I thought this West Virginia team wasn't going to look quite as good as they did. I think C.J. Donaldson helped the team, especially the offense, look better. But I think this West Virginia team, nationally, the expectations have not been very high. I think some people are starting to come around on this West Virginia team. As for Pitt, I don't know if this is the kind of team that's going to repeat as ACC champions. The defense looked pretty good. Obviously got a little more shaky as the game went on, as West Virginia kind of figured a few things out. But I think going forward, Pitt, as I mentioned earlier, it's going to be important for Keaton Slovis to build a relationship with his receivers and get that offense rolling like it was last year. They struggled to run the ball with their starting running back. I think that will get solved as I think West Virginia was also really big up front along the defensive line, and that probably didn't help. But I think the most important thing for this Pitt offense is to get that relationship even stronger, get the chemistry stronger between Keaton Slovis and all of his receivers that he has out there. The other Thursday night game I want to talk about may have been an even better game for as good as the Backyard Brawl game was. I think this game was probably a little bit better. So Penn State travels to West Lafayette, conference game to open the season. I love that. Stakes are high from the get-go. Travels to West Lafayette to take on a really potent Purdue offense, passing attack. Charlie Jones, Aiden O'Connell. That Purdue offense was really good. Not only was the Purdue offense good, but Charlie Jones had more receiving yards than his entire former team had passing yards. And we're going to get to the Iowa game a little bit later, but Charlie Jones, over 150 receiving yards, first game. Purdue offense looked great, but I want to talk about Penn State for a little bit, especially on the offense side of the football. The Penn State offense has to figure a way to run the football. Everyone knows the stat from last year. Penn State didn't have a 100-yard rusher in a single game. They ran for over 100 yards in multiple games, but they didn't have a single player run for over 100 yards. And their entire team didn't run for over 100 yards against Purdue. They ran for, I believe, 98. I thought Nick Singleton may be the answer, true 5-star true freshman running back. I thought he may be the answer to the running game. Ivan Lee got a lot of carries. Maybe James Franklin thinks that Ivan Lee's the answer. Maybe the offensive line underperformed, or they played worse than we were led to believe they would. But Penn State has to figure out how to fix the run. Sean Clifford isn't going to be able to carry this team to a Big Ten division championship, especially not when Michigan State, and Ohio State are in your division. So Penn State moving forward, they escaped the game with a win, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But you had to be able to figure out how to run the football. As for the Purdue offense, I had no issues with the Purdue offense until the very end of the game. So Penn State, if you watch the game, you know, Penn State threw a costly pick six. Purdue goes up 3, and then the Purdue offense the Purdue defense had a really big stop. Penn State goes 3 and out. Purdue gets the football with 6:30 left in the game, roughly. They throw the ball 6 plays in a row. They punt the ball to Penn State. Penn State goes 3 and out again. Now they give the ball back to Purdue. There's only about 4.5 minutes left in this game. This is the second time Purdue's had the ball since they've gone up, late in the fourth quarter. Purdue proceeds to throw the football 5 out of the next 6 plays and then punt the ball back to Penn State. Penn State, of course, walked down the field and scored because they weren't going to allow Purdue Purdue gave them way too many opportunities. They're going to capitalize on one of the opportunities. But on those 2 drives, Purdue threw the football 11 out of 12 plays. 8 of those passes ended up incomplete, which means the clock is going to stop a lot. So going forward, Jeff Brawl, I understand you don't want to be conservative because Purdue's a passing offense. Aiden O'Connell almost threw the ball 60 times. You don't want to be conservative at the end of games, but you have to play smart football, and that includes managing the clock. Even if Purdue ran the ball 3 times, both of those possessions, and just let the clock run, they would be in a much better position than throwing 8 incompletions in 12 plays. That killed the clock. The clock seemed that those last 6 minutes of the game seemed to take 15, 20 plus minutes, and then gave Penn State plenty of time to walk down the field, score a touchdown, win the game. So and I think the great thing for Purdue is, as bad as the Big Ten West looks at the current moment, they're not out of the division by any means. But I think going forward, Jeff Brom has to do a better job of managing the end of games. As for Penn State, I mentioned it earlier, run the ball on offense, or else you're not a viable contender in the East. You're not beating Ohio State on the back of Sean Clifford. You're not beating probably Michigan even on the back of Sean Clifford. You have to be able to give him help and allow him to kind of not take a few plays off, but he can't do everything. Sean Clifford isn't Superman. I think Anthony Richardson's a guy that you can run your offense through. You're not going to try to run your offense through Sean Clifford. Now, Penn State has really good receivers as well. I don't want to discount that. Parker Washington had a little bit of a quiet game, but Mitchell Tinsley, Western Kentucky transfer, had a really good game in his first ever game as a Penn State player. Keandre Lambert-Smith also had a good game. Penn State receiving corps is good, but you have to run the football. You have to have a balanced offense to even have a shot at winning the East this year, especially with how good that Ohio State defense looked. So we're done with Thursday night. We're moving on to the second night of our 5-night football marathon. We're going to talk about maybe one of the weirder games, VT at Old Dominion. There's a lot of weird things that happen in this game. Coaches getting stuck in elevators, turnovers, scooping scores off of field goals. There's a dog in Crocs, which was adorable. But I think the biggest takeaway is that Grant Wells hasn't figured out his turnover issue. Grant Wells, uber talented quarterback, transferred from Marshall to Virginia Tech. The biggest knock on him coming over from Marshall was that he turned the football over too much. Like I said, he has all the intangibles, all the athletic ability. I mean, almost not a build-your-own quarterback, but close to it. I mean, great arm, athletic enough, can make defenses pay with his feet. And we saw that he had a rushing touchdown against Old Dominion, so we're able to see that. But he'll make one throw that leaves you speechless, throw a deep comeback from the right hash over to the left side of the field on an absolute rope, hit his receiver in the face mask, and the next throw make a pass that everyone would completely regret throwing, including Grant Wells. So I think Grant Wells, the name of the game is consistency here going forward. You had to be consistent. Just because you make a few flash plays doesn't mean you can go turn the ball over. Virginia Tech turned the ball over 5 times. 4 of those were interceptions. And then, like I mentioned earlier, there was the field goal with the high snap that Old Dominion returned for a touchdown. I think a bright spot on the Virginia Tech offense was running back Keyshawn King. He had his second career game over 100 rushing yards. He was also giving Old Dominion defenders fits tackling him. So Keyshawn King had a really good game. On the Old Dominion side of the football, there wasn't much of a passing game to talk about. They only completed 40% of their passes. But running back Blake Watson, I thought, had a really good game for Old Dominion. Now, his stats may not be the best out of anyone that played on Friday night or even the entire weekend. I don't even know if he hit 50 yards. But a lot of running backs would have only ran for about 25 yards because that Virginia Tech defense knew that Old Dominion couldn't throw the football. So they were selling out to stop the run. And Watson had the biggest play of the game. As a 4th and 1, Old Dominion had to get it, continue to drive to score a touchdown to take the lead. Watson gets hit 5 yards in the backfield, spins off, cuts, puts his head down, picks up 2 yards. So Blake Watson, just want to give him a shout out. He had a fantastic game, even though the stats may tell you something different. Going forward, Virginia Tech, I mentioned it earlier, Virginia Tech has to cut down the turnovers. I have them going 7-5 for this upcoming season. It could be a lot worse if Grant Wells doesn't cut back on the turnovers. Second game from Friday night that I want to talk about. I want to talk about Illinois at Indiana. And this may have been one of the weirder games of the weekend. Illinois dominated in every single statistical category there could be. So Illinois ran for 235 yards. Indiana ran for 32 yards. Tommy DeVito played well. The defensive line was causing havoc in the Indiana backfield. Illinois played a complete game of football, fundamentally sound. They looked fantastic. The only issue is they turned the football over 4 times and then also got stopped on downs at the 1-yard line when they were about to score. It's tough to do that and win any football game, even when you outgain your opponent on the ground like that. Chase Brown played really well. Isaiah Williams played well. Tommy DeVito even played well. It's really, really hard to win games when you turn the ball over 4 times and you get stopped on the 1-yard line. There was a bad officiating moment in this game that also ended up hurting Illinois that would have allowed them to win the game. But Illinois played way too good of a game. But credit to Tom Allen's team. Football, at the end of the day, football is about finding ways to win games. And that's what Tom Allen's team did. Got the first conference win since the 2020 season. So kudos to them. Illinois, it's a disappointing loss, but you walk away saying, we played a really, really good game of football. Even though we lost, there's a lot of positives to build on from that game. We're going to head to Saturday, the noon time slot now. Maybe the craziest game of the week. I don't know. I feel like I've said that about multiple games already, and there's a lot more games I'm going to say that about going forward as well. Biggest takeaway from this game, Drake May is very, very good. I know a lot of people want to talk about the ending of the game, but I don't let that discount the fact that Drake May is very, very good. I'm not going to say he's a step up from Sam Hartman, but he certainly isn't a drop-off. I mean, Drake May can make every throw. He's athletic. He's going to give multiple defense fits going forward. The rest of the North Carolina offense, North Carolina was also missing their best player. Josh Downs is the best player on that team. He was ruled out right before game time. It's funny, you saw the line move. The line moved from North Carolina. They're hanging around the 3 to 2 point favorite. I'm scrolling through the sports books as I do before games. I see App State minus 2.5. What happened? Tweets start rolling in. Josh Downs ruled out. So North Carolina was also without their best offensive player. They scored 63, so it obviously didn't really affect them that much. But big credit to Drake May. He really put that Tar Heels offense on his back when it got a big win in Boone. As far as the North Carolina defense, I don't know what to make. I mean, so they looked bad to start the game. App State scored on the first 3 offensive drives, walked right down the field. Chase Bryce tearing them up, Cameron Peoples, Nate Noel tearing them up. And then they actually started to look like there's some sort of semblance of defense there for a little bit. Whole second part of the second quarter, no points. Whole third quarter, App State doesn't score. North Carolina's up 38-21 at one point. You think, okay, this North Carolina defense has turned a corner. And then they played one of the worst quarters of defense of football in history, allowing 40 points in the fourth quarter. I picked North Carolina to win the Coastal before the season started. I don't feel very good about that at the current moment. Not because of the offense. The offense could not look any better. The defense shows up sometimes and sometimes they don't. I mean, I had to kind of call it how it is at this point. Gene Chizik was brought in hoping to fix the defense. It hasn't happened yet. Now, there's a lot. Now, I don't want to overreact because there's a lot of football to be played. 10 regular season games left for North Carolina. They play Georgia State this week, which should still be a solid test. But Gene Chizik has to get this defense rolling in order to even have a shot at winning the Coastal. It's going to be tough because sometimes the defense looks great. I mean, the defense obviously has talent. Mac Brown's done a good job of recruiting kids to come to North Carolina. It's just one quarter, like I said, the third quarter they look great. App State couldn't get really a lot of momentum going. And then the fourth quarter, we see blown assignments. We see guys running wide open. We see missed tackles. We see confusion. There's a lot going on that North Carolina defense that they have to figure out. If they can, they're a serious contender in the ACC. Until then, I don't think they are. As far as the Appalachian State side of the football, that offense is going to give a lot of people fits in the Sun Belt. The offensive line was really good, really got a lot of movement at the point of attack in the fourth quarter against that North Carolina defensive line. Cameron Peoples and Nate Noel are one of the best 1-2 punches of running backs in the entire country. Chase Bryce, even though don't let the 2-point conversion pass make you forget how good he played the entire game. That App State team, as they usually do, is going to give a lot of team in the Sun Belt fits this upcoming season. So the other noon game in the state of North Carolina, I wrote about last week. If you wanted to see a really good noon college football game, just travel to North Carolina. And it turned out that that was the case, actually. So this game was crazy as well as the other one was. Holton Ahlers, I wanted to give him a shout out because he had a fantastic game. That NC State defense is very good. One of the most highly touted defense of the entire offseason. Holton Ahlers went in there. He was standing in the pocket, taking big hits, diving, running defenders over. He was putting his body on the line. He wanted to go win that football game. He's an absolute gamer, and he had a fantastic game. ECU offense was struggling to run the ball. He had to had to carry that offense a little bit, probably more than ECU wanted them to, but it almost won them the game because the NC State offense did not look good. NC State offense really struggled, actually. Devin Leary barely completed 50% of his passes. NC State only scored 14 offensive points. One of the NC State touchdowns came off the block punt that was returned for a touchdown. So this NC State offense has to figure out how to get going. It's the first week of the season. Once again, don't want to overreact, but that wasn't a performance of a team it's indicative of a team that wants to win the Atlantic. Not necessarily they don't want to win the Atlantic, but can they win the Atlantic? Can they beat the high-scoring Wake Forest team if the offense isn't going to score? Can they go in? They have to play at Clemson this year. Can they go into Clemson and beat Clemson if the offense is not executing at all levels? I also think a little bit was coaching. I like the personnel on offense. I like Devin Leary. I like Thayer Thomas. I like a lot of the weapons they have on offense. I think a little bit was coaching, a little bit of it was execution. So NC State, ultimately, they walked away with the win. And also, shout out to NC State special teams. Obviously, the missed kicks, there's not much you can do about that as a special teams unless you block them. But the block punt for the touchdown ended up winning them the game, which you couldn't see. That was in the first half. But it ended up winning the game. So ultimately, the Wolfpack walked away with the win, which is the most important part. But there's a lot of things to improve on, especially if you want to compete for the Atlantic, which a lot of people think they're going to this season. Next game, the last game actually from the noon slot, I wanted to put this up. I guess it's on this side of the screen. I want to put this up because there was no O's in this game, no offense at all, and this newspaper recognized it as well. So Iowa victory with no O's because neither team scored a touchdown. Now, the final was 7-3. Iowa had 2 safeties and a field goal. So their special teams scored 3, defense scored 4, and offense scored 0. The reason, obviously, this wasn't a great football game to watch. South Dakota State's a very good team. It's not like Iowa's going to go in and roll South Dakota State at any point of the game. But the reason I want to talk about this is, first off, I feel bad for Hawkeyes fans. Second off, Iowa isn't going to be able to reach their full potential with Brian Ferentz as the offensive coordinator. I mean, we've seen it he's been the offensive coordinator since 2016, I believe. This Iowa defense, or this Iowa offense the past few years has only gotten worse. I think there has to be a change of the offensive coordinator. There's no innovation in this offense. There's nothing that you look at this offense and scream, this yells 21st century, this yells 2022 offense. It doesn't even really yell 21st century offense, but it definitely doesn't yell 2022 offense. You have to get some new blood in there. Another thing we see is, like I mentioned, Charlie Jones transferred to Purdue this past offseason. He went out and had a fantastic game as his first game as a Boilermaker. What did Iowa do to replace Charlie Jones? Do they have anyone behind him to step and fill that role? Charlie Jones was horribly underutilized in this Iowa offense, and we saw it in his first game at Purdue. I think Brian Ferentz has to go. I don't think he will because of his relation to the head coach. But I feel bad for Hawkeyes fans, and it's going to be a long season if we continue to allow Brian Ferentz to run, create plays, call plays for this Iowa offense. So, sorry Hawkeyes fans, but I'm going to thoroughly enjoy watching Iowa win games 7-3 with 2 safeties. Now we're going to move to the 3:30 slot. We have Arkansas playing at home against Cincinnati. Let me tell you, I was really impressed with the Cincinnati team. I had Arkansas minus 6.5, which ended up being a pretty close bet, but we were on the winning side of it. But Cincinnati really impressed me. You're replacing 9+ starters, and you're still able to go out against the SEC team on the road to compete like that. Big credit to Luke Fickell and his squad going out, trying to executing their game plan to the best of the abilities. They looked really solid against a very, very good Arkansas team. It was unfortunate because Cincinnati walked away feeling like they could have won the game. Ben Bryant, first time starting at Cincinnati, was the former starter at Eastern Michigan. I thought it was going to be Evan Prater going into the game, but Ben Bryant rolled out there. He missed probably about a half a dozen wide receivers running wide open downfield. And it was tough to watch because, I mean, as a team like Cincinnati, you can't make a ton of mistakes and go and beat a team like Arkansas. And they just left way too many opportunities on the table. I mean, when I say running wide open, they were wide open. I mean, just fingertips away. And that will get figured out. Ben Bryant, like I said, first start at Cincinnati. He has to take time to kind of get that chemistry with his receivers. But Cincinnati just left too many opportunities on the table to walk out there with a win. And it's going to be disappointing because the coaching staff's going to walk away feeling like they only scored 24. They feel like they easily could have scored 38 or even 40-plus points and won that game. But I think Cincinnati, like I said, I was really impressed with how Luke Fickell and his team prepared. As far as Arkansas wasn't clicking on all cylinders on either side of the football, especially not in the defensive backfield. They were really struggling at just finding receivers, tracking receivers. They were trying to switch. It wasn't working. That's what happens when you have a lot of transfers and a lot of youth in the secondary. So I think they'll get that figured out. A big concern for me with that Arkansas defensive backfield is Jalen Catalon. Sam Pittman's not telling us the extent of the injury yet, which kind of concerns me. I hope, like I did a player breakdown on him earlier this offseason. I love Jalen Catalon. He's the heart and soul of that Arkansas defense. He's the guy that makes things happen. I hope he can come back because I have the over on Arkansas for total wins, but also I love him, watching him as a player. It concerns me a little bit. But on the other side of the football, the Arkansas offense also wasn't clicking on all cylinders, and they're still able to put up 31 points. I think that kind of tells you where the state of this program is. They're not operating on all cylinders week one. New transfer wide receivers, Matt Landers from Toledo. You have Jaden Hazelwood from Oklahoma. And the connection wasn't quite there with KJ Jefferson. You could tell that. But this Arkansas offense was still able to get the job done, still able to be a really gritty Cincinnati team. I think that's all that matters week one, if we're being honest, is just getting away with a win and figuring out what you have to improve on. But like I mentioned earlier with Pitt and Keaton Slovis having to kind of get that chemistry with his receivers, and same thing with Cincinnati and Ben Bryant. Ben Bryant having to develop that chemistry with his receivers. KJ Jefferson has brand new weapons on the outside. It'll take time, but it'll get better as the season goes on. So that's a positive for Arkansas fans. I think going forward, Arkansas also has to, like I said earlier, has to secure some of those issues on the defensive backfield. I think that'll be fine, but the pass rush did look a lot better, and Drew Sanders had a really good game. So that's a bright spot for Arkansas fans. Next game, I'm going to keep this one brief as well because, to be quite honest, there isn't a lot to talk about. I'm going to talk about Miami, Bethune-Cookman, and Georgia-Oregon really fast. Josh Pate best described the Georgia-Oregon game. He called it a splattering in Atlanta. I can't really think of a better word for that. There's not a lot to say either. I mean, Georgia went out and proved why they're the defending national champions. Oregon came out and looked like a team. They had a new head coach and had a new quarterback playing. And they looked like they were playing against the defending national champions. I think Darnell Washington may be an alien. Not 100% sure. But, I mean, Isaac Delp was able to get in the game as a true freshman tight end in one of the most talented tight end rooms in the country. Georgia defense didn't really look like they missed a beat. Michael Williams started as a true freshman on that defense while Robert Beal, Nolan Smith, Jalen Carter are all back. Georgia's going to be a juggernaut. I think I don't want to proclaim this, but Georgia's reaching year after year that Ohio State, Alabama level where it doesn't matter who we lose. We're going to be just as good as we were last year because we have a 5-star behind them to replace him, or we have this kid that's been in the program for 3 years who's been waiting his turn that's going to replace him. As far as Oregon, I don't think this game is indicative of how the rest of the year is going to be. I just don't think Oregon's going to implode as a team. Dan Lanning will figure things out. That staff, Kenny Dillingham, they'll figure things out as the season progresses. It's just tough to start to have your first game as a head coach against the defending national champions. But look forward to watching both of these teams play going for the rest of the season. Other game, Miami Bethune-Cookman. I think Miami's offense is going to be a lot of fun to watch. Josh Gaddis, Tyler Van Dyke. I think the receiver issues were a little overblown. The receivers looked pretty solid. The first game, no drops, which is all you can really ask for, especially if you're playing Bethune-Cookman. Other flip side of the football, though, Miami defense. I think while we might have overestimated the issues at receiver, we might have underestimated some of the issues at linebacker and even one of the corner positions. Linebacker's an issue for Miami. I wrote about it I did a team breakdown on them. I wrote about it a few months ago. I also wrote about it during my ACC Coastal breakdown. But Miami's linebackers, especially the two that they started Corey Flagg and Wayman Steen on Saturday. I don't think those will be the two starting by the time the A&M game rolls around here in about a week and a half. I think Miami's going to they play Southern Miss this week, which gives them the opportunity to rotate more guys in. And they were rotating last week, but rotate guys in with the rest of the starting defense. Because the Miami linebackers are easily the weakness of the defense. And then also another position I think Miami thought they had locked up that probably isn't is the second cornerback position. So you have Tyreek Stevenson on one side as the outside corner. The other outside corner has been a camp battle, but there's a lot of names in there. Darryl Porter, Isaiah Dunson, DJ Ivey. DJ Ivey got the start, didn't play fantastic. So expect to see a little bit more of Isaiah Dunson and Darryl Porter Jr. here this Saturday against Southern Miss. Going forward, Miami's going to figure out those two positions on defense. I guess three because they're playing two linebackers at one time. If Miami can figure out those three positions on defense, they're more likely to have a competitive game against Texas A&M in Week 3. So we're moving to the game of the week now. So my favorite game heading into last weekend, and after last weekend, it's still my favorite game. Utah traveling to the Swamp to take on Florida. That was a fantastic football game. I mean, if anyone watched it, it was back and forth the entire time. Both teams trading blows. The fourth quarter, the whole second half felt like a lot of big slugfest. I want to talk about the Florida offense. Give a lot of credit to offensive coordinator Rob Sale. Came from the NFL, with the Giants offensive line coach last season, I believe. This Florida offense had a lot more pro elements mixed into it than I thought it was going to. A lot of zones, a lot of outside zone, a lot of boots off of zones, a lot of split zone reads. I mean, there's a lot of pro concepts in this Florida offense, which I wasn't expecting. I knew Rob Sale came from the NFL, but I was really impressed with this Florida offense. I was also really impressed with the Utah offense. The Utah offense got better as the game went on. You saw them later in the second half start to impose their will against that Florida front seven, kind of run the ball at will. Both teams should keep their heads held, especially Florida. I think Florida, it's probably time to reassess your expectations for the season. I had Florida finishing 7-5 heading into the season. I think anything below 9-3 would be disappointing as long as Anthony Richardson stays healthy. I think maybe dropping A&M, Georgia, maybe Tennessee. I think that would be a successful year for Florida now. You have to do it after week 1. And then on the other side for Utah, I don't think Utah should walk away with their heads low. I mean, there's 20 seconds left in the game. You're inside the 5-yard line. If Cam Rising throws the ball away, maybe you kick a field goal and you head into overtime, or you score a touchdown on the next play on 3rd and goal and you win the game outright. So Utah played a fantastic game. They just made one too many mistakes. Them getting stopped on the 1-yard line earlier in the half also didn't help. But Utah, you still have all Pac-12 play to look for. I mean, they haven't played a single Pac-12 game, and you still maybe even have the college football playoff. They may need a little bit of help, but I don't think Utah's season's over by any means. Really impressed with both teams. That's why it was the game of the week. The other game on Saturday night, Ohio State and Notre Dame. I think it was an interesting game because I don't think it went anything like anyone was expecting it to. I thought Ohio State was going to go out there and just boat race Notre Dame, at least on the defensive side of the football. I thought the Ohio State defense would look a little bit more leaky than they did. It was the first game under Jim Knowles, so that was I thought the Ohio State defense would get better as the season went on, but the first game under Jim Knowles against a pretty talented Notre Dame team, I thought they would look a little bit leaky. That didn't happen at all. The Ohio State offense was contained and maybe even shut down. I mean, I know Jackson Smith-Njigba got hurt, but let's not act like the rest of the Ohio State receiving room is just full of scrubs. I mean, that Ohio State offense is still very, very... You still have Travion Henderson in the backfield. You still have C.J. Stroud in the backfield. You still have Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Ibuka. I mean, there's talented guys on the Ohio State offense without Jackson Smith-Njigba. I think the Notre Dame game plan really helped them. I was impressed with the game plan put together by Al Golden and Marcus Freeman. I think Notre Dame, going forward, you can learn a lot from this game. The defense is really, really good at Notre Dame. I don't think a lot of us saw that coming. I don't think it was a massive surprise, but I don't think a lot of us saw them holding Ohio State to 21 points. Especially, I think 14 of them were scored in the fourth quarter as well. So I think Notre Dame can walk away. They have a lot to work on the offensive side of the football, and vice versa. I think Ohio State does have things to work on the offensive side of the football. I fully expect them to get it worked out. But I think the defense was a pleasant surprise. I think this is a good win for Ohio State, for being honest. Last season, if Ohio State offense wasn't clicking on all cylinders, they would lose the game. I mean, we saw it against Michigan. We saw it against Oregon earlier in the season, and we almost saw it against Utah. The offense finally got rocking and rolling there in the second half more than they were earlier in the game. But this Ohio State defense, if they can play like this, Ohio State can compete with anyone because their offense can have an off day and the defense can make up the slack, and vice versa. Maybe the defense has an off day. We know that offense has enough firepower to compete with anyone. So I think both teams are going to walk away knowing, hey, we have things that we are happy with and things we weren't happy with. So they're going to just have to improve on the off. Really, both offenses are going to have to look better going forward. Now we're going to move into the I know I've said crazy 8 times. It's getting a little bit repetitive here. But I think this one really was. I'd have no words to describe the end of this game. I actually turned the game off because when Malik Neighbors muffed the second punt, I turned the game off. I was like, Florida State's just going to take the knees and kick it. I mean, there's no reason for me to watch it. And then I start getting tweets. My tweet notifications start going crazy. I got a text. It's like, why are you doing that, Norvell? I was like, oh, gosh, what happened, Florida State? LSU has the ball at the 30-yard line when I turn it back on. So overall, but let's not just talk about the end of the game. The whole game, I definitely wasn't enthusiastic. I didn't think LSU's offensive game plan was very good. I said last week the job of the LSU quarterback is going to be to get the ball to number 1, which it changes number to number 7. My bad on that one. The job of the LSU quarterback was to get the ball to Kayshon Boutte. Kayshon Boutte didn't get the ball until there was less than 6 minutes left in the game. He didn't touch the football until there was less than 6 minutes left in the game. Mike Denbrock, the offensive coordinator, how are you not throwing a screen to Kayshon Boutte? How are you not running a jet sweep? How are you not giving him an opportunity to go win? I understand Florida was doubling him for a good chunk of the game. You have to get the ball into the hands of your playmakers. And not only that, LSU only ran the ball designed with the running back 12 or 13 times throughout the game, which also isn't helping Jaden Daniels. This is Jaden Daniels' first game in your system. I thought we were going to see Jaden Daniels obviously he uses his legs, but a lot of that was improvised. I thought we were going to see a lot of design quarterback runs. We're going to see a lot of motions. We're going to see a lot of quick passes to get Jaden Daniels comfortable and acclimated to the LSU offense in live game action. We saw none of that. So overall, I think it was a pretty disappointing game plan for Mike Denbrock, the LSU offensive coordinator. Other side of the football, Florida State was the complete opposite. I loved the game plan that Mike Norvell and Alex Atkins came up with. Really impressed me. Florida State didn't try to do anything they weren't. Florida State didn't try to become a deep bomb offense. They weren't throwing the ball over the yard. They weren't running the ball super effectively, but they also didn't have a lot of negative runs, which meant the ball was moving forward. Jordan Travis was really improved from last year. I was happy to see his progression. It feels like he's been in college. He's been at Florida State for a while now. But I was happy to see this Florida State offense look better and play with themselves as well. They didn't try to be someone else. They ran the football. Jordan Travis used his legs. He was efficient passing. I think he finished 20 for 33. Solid game for Florida State. Solid game plan for Florida State as well. Until the last drive of the game for the Seminoles. Mike Norvell. My notes here say, what are you doing, Norvell? And I think that's the perfect way to phrase that. Take a knee and kick the field goal. Stop trying to be cute. You're not coaching for your job. I mean, you may be coaching for your job. You keep making decisions like this. Stop coaching for your job. Go up 2 scores. Make LSU use their timeouts. Why are you trying to score a touchdown? What's the difference at that point in the game? What's the difference between 14 and 10 points? You're already covering the spread, so I mean, you can't even say that either. You're an underdog, so you're winning outright. Take 3 knees. Make LSU use their timeouts. Kick a field goal. Go up 2 scores, and then you walk out there with a win. Instead, Florida State's offense got really cute. They tried to run a toss, which anyone knows is one of the. I mean, if you want to fumble the ball on a run play, toss is probably one of your best options. That or a jet sweep. I mean, anything where the ball isn't being directly handed to someone that's going to increase your chances of a fumble. Florida State goes out there and runs a toss. Mike Norvell, stop trying to be cute. Go out there, win the game. Take knees, win the game. Play, and same thing. So Malik Neighbors muffs the punt in the first half. Florida State gets the ball, and I think they're at the 15-yard line. Mike Norvell, instead of taking the free points, because it was free points because it was off an LSU turnover, taking the easy 3 points, Mike Norvell decides to throw a fade ball to a 5'10 receiver. That is when you have a 6'7 receiver on the other side of the football as well. Johnny Wilson's 6'7". Micah Pittman's 5'10". Like, I had an issue with the play call and the decision. I had an even bigger issue with the execution of that play call. So ultimately, I think Mike Norvell, you're not coaching for your job. Go out there, sometimes you just need to make the safe plays. Sometimes the safe plays are the best plays to make. Going forward, I don't see how this LSU team could really play much worse, to be honest with you. I think Jaden Daniels did get more comfortable as the game went on. It seemed like he did a good job of staying in the pocket, going through his progressions, despite not with the help of his offensive coordinator, despite what the offensive coordinator wanted him to do. I think Jaden Daniels looked really good on those last 2 LSU drives. Florida State, I think they need. I don't know what the ceiling of this team is, but I think if they play within this offense and they do, and obviously they're not going to run the ball better than they did against LSU because not every team they're going to play this season is going to be as talented as LSU. But I think if Florida State's able to play within their offense like they did on Sunday night, I guess it was, then they're going to probably be a 8-win football team, which I don't think is a bad thing for Florida State fans. Last game of the weekend. This one really hurt me. I'm not going to lie. It was a pretty forgettable game if you go back and watch it. Clemson had the handcuffs on DJ Uiagalelei the entire game. That Clemson offense, very, very vanilla for the vast majority of the game. There wasn't a lot to speak home about. Clemson defense is very good. We knew that. We knew their front four was the best, probably in all. I think it's the best in all college football. I think a lot of people agree with me on that. The Clemson offense looked vanilla. They were basically hand-wrapped 2 touchdowns off of blocked punts. And then we all got a little bit of a surprise at the end of the game. Cade Klubnik walks in. So let me preface this whole, before I talk about Cade Klubnik, with I had the under in this game. The under was 51. At this point, they were at 44 when Cade Klubnik came into the game. There's 3 minutes left. I needed Cade Klubnik to go out there and look like a true freshman. He looked like anything but a true freshman. Cade Klubnik walked the Tigers down the field, made a few really good throws. He had a pump fake to fake screen, ripped the ball up the seam in the red zone, rolling out, threw a really good comeback route as well. Cade Klubnik looks spectacular. I mean, I think everyone knows it's moved from a matter of if to a matter of when. When does Cade Klubnik take over for this Tigers team? When you ask anyone on the Clemson schedule who they would rather see at quarterback, every single person you're going to ask is going to tell you, we would rather see DJ because they saw what Cade Klubnik can do and what this Tiger offense looks like when Cade Klubnik's in. Not to mention that he was with the backups. He wasn't even with the starters. He's with the backups. So imagine once you get – I know this Clemson receiving core isn't great, but I think when you elevate the talent around Cade, it'll only make him better. So I think it's a matter of time. I think we all know this. I don't think I'm saying anything groundbreaking here, but I think it's just a matter of time until Cade Klubnik becomes the starting quarterback for Clemson. So that's going to conclude the recap of all the Week 1 games. Let me know if you guys like that. Feel free to DM me on Twitter, leave a comment on YouTube, email me, cfbcauldron@gmail.com. It was pretty long. It was about 35 minutes, but I love recapping all these games. Let me know if you guys liked it. Next, we're going to go back and look at the Week 1 picks. Wasn't a horrible Week 1. It could have been a lot worse if we're being completely honest. Also could have been a lot better. So I went 1, 2, and 3. I've never had multiple pushes in a single week in my life. I had 3 pushes this past week. I'm not sure if that's a good sign or a bad sign. Guess we'll see here in the upcoming weeks. So we pushed the Illinois game. Don't know how that happened. We won the Cincinnati-Arkansas game by 0.5 point, so I'm glad I got them at 6.5 instead of 7. The only game I got really lucky with was Houston-UTSA. A game had to go in triple overtime. That pushed as well. Utah-Florida, that was tough because Utah was obviously at 5-yard line. You know the story. That was really close to hitting as well. LSU-Florida State, that I texted someone. I was like, man, my LSU bet may hit because the game looked like it was going to go to overtime. It did not. So I probably jinxed the Tigers. My bad, Brian Kelly. And then the Clemson at Georgia Tech game, I had the under. That pushed as well. Thanks a lot, Cade Klubnik. So like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I'm not going to shy away from my picks. If I have a bad week, I have a bad week. We're just going to move on, survive and advance, as Jim Valvano says. So we're heading to week 2. Don't love the board this week, to be completely honest with you. Didn't see a ton that stood out. I have a few bets I do like, though. And then first CFB Cauldron parlay. So excited to share that with you guys. Southern Miss at Miami. I like the over here. Kane's offense looked really good last week. They were vanilla, and they looked really good. They were able to run the football. Tyler Van Dyke looked really good when he was allowed to throw the football. It wasn't often. I think Southern Miss scores on this Miami team as well. Frank Gore Jr. is a really, really versatile player for Southern Miss. He'll get a lot of carries. I like Southern Miss to score at least 10 points. I think Miami scored probably over 50. I was surprised to see this total was this low, given the fact that App State and Texas A&M was the same total. And Texas A&M just scored 31 points on FCS team. And A&M also has a very good defense. So I thought this number would be closer to 60. Glad I found it at 54, though. UTSA at Army. UTSA had a tough loss last week. Jeff Traylor's a really, really good head coach. Army also had a tough loss at home or against Coastal Carolina last week. I like the Roadrunners here. I like Frank Harris' experience. He played well against Houston, and Houston was a ranked team that they gave a really tough challenge to. So I like the Roadrunners laying 2 here on the road. Kansas State at West Virginia. I don't know if this line also confused me. I thought this would be closer to 20, 21 points. I was very shocked, to say the least, when I saw it at 13.5. I think this is one of the safer bets of the week. I love Kansas. I want Kansas football to be good so bad. It's not there yet. They're heading in the right direction. I think Jaden Daniels is a really good quarterback. Kenny Logan's a really good safety. There's a lot of pieces on that Kansas team. It's not there yet. And also with the performance of C.J. Donaldson in the backyard brawl, I like West Virginia minus 13.5 at home. And our first ever CFB Cauldron parlay. So we have moneyline favorite parlay, A&M minus 1,100, Notre Dame minus 1,500, Bama on the road minus 1,500, Arizona State at Oklahoma State. We have the Cowboys minus 405, which seems a little off. And then UConn at Syracuse minus 2,200. So A&M, I'll go through each one of these really quick. A&M at App State. I expect the Aggies to come out firing on all cylinders. They didn't look great last week against Sam Houston State. I expect Jimbo to kind of light a fire under them, and I think App State's, even though App State this bet scares me more than any other ones. This scares me more than Arizona State, Oklahoma State. I am scared of App State. I will go out there and say it. I'm scared of this one losing, but I think Jimbo gets those guys ready to play, especially after a weird game with a weather delay and subpar performance. And honestly, they've been taking a lot of crap with the national media, so I expect Texas A&M come out ready to play. All they have to do is win. Remember, it can go to triple overtime as long as they win. The parlay lives. Notre Dame, really impressed with the defense last week. I like what they did. Marshall's replacing Grant Wells, which seems like it's going to be tough. I like the Irish at home here. Nick Saban hasn't lost an conference regular season game at Alabama since 2007, and I was 6 years old. So we're going to take Alabama here. Money line, Arizona State at Oklahoma State. I really like the Cowboys here. I know they lost Jim Knowles. I think Derek Mason's a really, really good defensive coordinator as well. I just think it's going to take a little bit of time. You have a different guy calling plays. You're doing things a different way. They also lost a lot of key contributors from that 2021 defense. I think I was really encouraged with the Oklahoma State offense, though. If you've watched Spencer Sanders, you know it's been a little bit of an up and down ride watching him throughout his college career. He had a really good game against Central Michigan. So I like the Cowboys here at home against the Emory Jones-led Sun Devils. And then a game I didn't recap, but I kind of want to touch on. Syracuse boat raced Louisville last week. Louisville was one of the trendy picks to win the ACC Atlantic. You have Malik Cunningham. You have a lot of pieces that are coming back. I know they lost Tyler Harrell, but Malik Cunningham is a great quarterback. Scott Satterfield has a great recruiting class coming in. Louisville was a really trendy pick, and they got boat raced by Sean Tucker and Garrett Schrader. It was 31-7. The game was never close. Sean Tucker is one of my favorite backs in all college football, but Garrett Schrader went out there and had a fantastic game. Former Mississippi State quarterback, transferred to Syracuse prior to last year. I think he's really comfortable in Dino Babers' system now. I like the orange here. I do like what Jim Moore is doing at UConn, but I think Zion Turner being a true freshman, it's a lot to deal with, especially when you have a great running back and even a really good-looking quarterback to this point in the season on the other side. So those are the week 2 bets. Hopefully, if we're going off percentage, I'm 41%. Not bad for week 1. Josh Pate went 1-3-1, so I'm doing better than him, and he knows college football about as good as anyone. So there's a science to this. Week 1, not bad. I'm fine with going a little under 50% on week 1. So hopefully we can have a bounce back here in week 2. So just gonna go over 3 of my top matchups in week 2 upcoming. So my 3 top matchups are gonna be Tennessee and Pitt. I love this game for a multitude of reasons. This is one of those weird games where the Vegas knows more than the AP, because I think Tennessee's 24 in the AP and Pitt is ranked all the way up at 17. And Tennessee's almost a full touchdown favorite on the road. I'm looking forward to that game. Looking forward to see if this Pitt offense can keep up with this Tennessee offense. And I know Brew McCoy already played, but how does Brew McCoy look in his second game? I'm really excited to see him with Cedric Tillman on the other side. I'm excited to watch this Tennessee offense, especially, and see if this Pitt offense can keep up with them, and can the Pitt defense line get any pass rush on Hendon Hooker. Second game I'm looking forward to is going to be Spencer Rattler and the Gamecocks traveling to Fayetteville to take on Arkansas. Really odd matchup. You don't see these two teams play. They're obviously on other sides of the division. But I think it's going to be a good matchup. South Carolina has pieces at receiver. South Carolina has a quarterback that can get in the football. I understand they didn't look fantastic week 1. But this Arkansas defense, especially the defensive backfield, looked pretty leaky week 1. So I'd like to see if Spencer Rattler and the Gamecock offense can take advantage of the leaky Arkansas back end. And then on the other side of the football, The South Carolina defense was actually one of the better run defenses in all of the SEC. Or no, my bad, one of the better pass defenses in the SEC last season. So I want to see if this Arkansas offense is going to be able to just run the football, or are they going to open it up a little bit more, or are they just going to stick to what they know. So that's going to be another interesting in-conference matchup. Last game is going to be Kentucky at Florida. Like I said, I had nothing but praise for Billy Napier's squad last week. They looked fantastic. Looked probably better than any first-time head coach team did not first-time head coach team, but new head coach team last week did. They have a tough game. I mean, this is a tough opening stretch for Florida. I mean, so I think they play USF, and then after Kentucky, they play USF, and then they go on the road to take on Tennessee. It's a brutal 4-game stretch. If you win this game, then the Florida hype is real. I mean, Kentucky's a solid team. Not sure if Chris Rodriguez is going to be playing, but Cavalier Smoke's still in that backfield. Will Levis is still a really good quarterback. Excited to see this. Florida, the line's moved heavily in Florida's favor since the books open. I think it opened at 3. I tried to get the bet at 4.5, and then it kicked my bet out, and then it made me try to take it at 5.5, which I didn't like quite as much. But excited to see this. Excited to see Anthony Richardson. He's got all the praise in the world. How does he respond? I have a feeling he'll play really well again against Kentucky. So after last week's show, I also thank you Jaguars United. I went on Jaguars United last Thursday. He did a great job plugging my channel. I went out and told everyone in that video, hey, if you have any questions for me, I'm more than happy to talk about anything you want me to. I'm an open book when it comes to college football. I don't care what we talk about. This channel doesn't work if no one watches it. So if you have any recommendations, like I said, I have Twitter, CFB Cauldron on Twitter and Instagram. Prefer Twitter. I'm on Twitter almost every day. Instagram, shaky. Drop a comment in the YouTube section, or also I have an email, cfbcauldron@gmail.com, that I referenced earlier. So feel free to contact me if you want me to talk about anything. We have one person that did actually drop the YouTube comment. So Patrick Jackson asked, would love to hear your thoughts on Mo Ibrahim's future. Before his unfortunate injuries, he looked great for the Gophers. I'm worried about how that'll translate to the NFL after a long, bruising college career. That's a fantastic question. I'm happy to answer it. So let's talk about Minnesota and Mo Ibrahim more specifically. Mo Ibrahim has 10 rushing school records for the Gophers. One of the best running backs in school history, if not the best running back. It looks like he's going to approach it, have even more records by the time that this year's over. Had a monster 2020. Remember, the Big Ten had that really short season. He still had over 1,000 rushing yards. Like I said, monster 2020. 2021, expectations were really high for Mo Ibrahim and the whole Minnesota team, to be honest with you. So heading into that 2021 first game against Ohio State, Mo Ibrahim is tearing the Buckeyes up. It's the third quarter. He already has over 30 carries and over 150 rushing yards. Like I said, last year the way to beat Ohio State was be physical, beat them up front, and Mo Ibrahim was doing that. Tore his Achilles, and it was horrible to watch. I mean, because the kid was having himself a game on. It was his 13th night game. It was on national television. It was the Fox game. It was horrible to watch. But Mo Ibrahim's back. Had a great first game. I believe they played New Mexico State with former head coach Jerry Kill. So that was a fun matchup. Mo Ibrahim is a fantastic Big Ten running back. 5'10", 210, thick. He's great in zone schemes. Minnesota runs a lot of zone schemes, which he really excels in. He's a great one-cut runner. You see Mo Ibrahim, he's not going to be a guy. He's not going to be a guy that's going to have great acceleration. So what you want to do is you want to get him going downhill. He's not super explosive either. You want him to have as much momentum carrying the line of scrimmage. He's not afraid to put his shoulder down into a linebacker and try to get as many yards as he can. He's an absolutely bell cow kind of running back. The issue with Mo, as far as his NFL future, he turns 24 tomorrow. Happy early birthday, Mo Ibrahim, if you're watching. But he turns 24 tomorrow, which means by the time he would play his first NFL game, he would be 25 years old. A lot of GMs don't like not even drafting running backs. They only like signing running backs that are over 25 years old. That kind of shelf life on a running back is 5 to 6 years in the NFL at most. A lot of people think. I mean, Derrick Henry's getting up there now. He's obviously a different animal. But I think it's tough to get drafted as a 25-year-old running back, no matter who you are. I mean, you could be Mo Ibrahim. You could be Alvin Kamara. You could be DeAndre Swift. I mean, I'm naming random SEC running backs for whatever reason. But I'm naming guys that were drafted a little bit higher. You could be Travis Etienne, Najee Harris. You could be immensely talented. It's going to be difficult to be drafted as a running back at 25 years old. Just because, especially a guy like Mo Ibrahim that's already had so many carries throughout his college career, it's going to be hard to get drafted. And then given the fact that he's coming off a major injury and a torn Achilles, that's even going to knock his stock a little bit more. I love watching him play. I love watching the Gophers play and just let him run. I love running backs that just run the ball 40, 50 times a game. They're obviously not running that much, but just be an absolute bell cow for a team. I think the NFL level doesn't like that as much. They want a guy with a little bit fresher tires and a guy without any major injury concerns. And given the fact that he's 25, I don't like his odds of getting drafted. Now, there's always a good shot that he comes in, and this happens all the time. I mean, James Robinson's starting running back for the Jaguars. He was an undrafted free agent, and he didn't test super well either. And now he's the starting running back for the Jaguars, splitting carries with Travis Etienne. I think there's a chance for Mo Ibrahim to make a team and maybe even excel at that team. I don't think a team will use a draft pick on him simply because of his age and his injury history. And also, I don't think he's going to test crazy either. I don't think Mo Ibrahim's going to go out and run a 4.4, which is fine. Running backs get by. I mentioned James Robinson ran a 4.6. Running backs can get by without testing crazy, but it's going to be tough when you're already 25 years old and you're coming off a major injury. But actually, I'm glad Patrick asked that question because I want to talk about the Big Ten West a little bit. I want to kind of do a breakdown of division each show. If you like it, just recommended division. The only division that I wrote an article on was the ACC Coastal. And the reason I didn't do it for any other teams is because it took me about a week and a half. It took me entirely too long. So we're going to talk about the Big Ten West today. So these are the standings after week 1 and week 0 because Nebraska's and Northwestern both, or just Nebraska's played 2 games. I couldn't tell you who's going to win this division. That's the reason I want to talk about today. This is probably the most wide open division in football. It's usually wide open. I feel like it's extra wide open this year, if that's even the right way to phrase it. Northwestern looked really good in the first week against Nebraska, or I guess week 0 against Nebraska. Iowa could not have played worse and won against South Dakota State. The offense looked miserable, didn't score a touchdown. I don't know, Patrick, I don't know if you're a Minnesota fan. I'm probably going to buy stock in the Gophers at this point. Tanner Morgan's been in college for what feels like forever. Chris Auden-Bell's a really good number 1 option at receiver. Mo Ibrahim's a workhorse at running back. You do have to replace Boye Mafe at the edge, so you're kind of wondering how you're going to get pass rush from that Minnesota defense. But I know some people don't like him. I'm a believer in PJ Fleck. I'm buying stock in the Gophers and the Badgers at this point because, and maybe Northwestern as well. I'm not absolutely selling Nebraska. I'm selling Iowa easily. And also, as much as I want to buy stock in Illinois, losing to probably the worst team in the East, they're not absolutely not out of it. They have an uphill battle, though, after losing to Indiana. So the Big Ten West is absolutely wide open. Wisconsin, there's a lot of questions at Wisconsin. You have Braylon Allen, who's, I think at one point he had 3 carries for 103 yards. He's, like I said, Darnell Washington's an alien. Braylon Allen's an alien also. Can't confirm or deny it, but he may be an alien. But Graham Mertz hasn't proven anything since he's been in college. He's a great recruit. Hasn't proven a lot since he's got into college. So there's a lot of questions with that Wisconsin. You know, Jim Leonard's always going to put out really good defense, but there's a lot of questions on offense. I wouldn't hate a bet on it. I don't know what the odds are. I should have looked that up before, but I wouldn't hate a bet on the Gophers at this point. It's shaping up pretty nicely. I think another team that I may want to put money on is Northwestern. Ryan Helinski, he's not going to play as well as he did against Nebraska every single week. But Ryan Helinski looked really, really good and really comfortable in that Northwestern offense. Evan Hull's a really good running back who I was impressed with against Nebraska as well. So, yeah, I just want to bring this up and talk about how crazy I think the Big Ten West is going to be. If there's a year for Minnesota to go ahead and win it, might as well do it now. Tanner Morgan's been bald since he got in college. I mean, I don't know. Tanner Morgan's been at Minnesota for 85 years. Mo Ibrahim's heading into 6th year of college. There's a good shot that Minnesota had, or there's an open opportunity for Minnesota to go and take the West this year. I think they're a team that not a lot of people are talking about just because Minnesota football historically hasn't been a team like Wisconsin or Iowa. I mean, they haven't won the division, I don't think, since they've had this current format. But I think if there's ever a year to do it, I think now's your year. I think Minnesota, try to build off that success that you had with a somewhat similar team in 2019, carry it over to 2022, go out there and win the division because right now it seems like it's wide open for the taking. So that is tonight's show. We're finishing out at around 55 minutes, well, a little longer than I would have liked. If you're watching live or you're watching afterwards, like I said, feel free to contact me. I'm more than happy to talk about anything that you guys want me to. Follow me on all my social medias. It's just going to be CFB Cauldron. Subscribe to the channel if you like this. Thank you so much. Looking forward to an awesome week 2. I know I'm going to be watching a lot of games. I'm going to post an article about which games I'm going to be watching at each time slot, and that's going to directly affect for the most part, that's going to affect which games I recap. If you even want me to watch a certain game, I'm more than happy to do that. You want me to recap a certain game, more than happy to do that. I had a more detailed recap of every game on the website, so that's just going to be cfbcauldron.com. If you